All right, everyone, welcome back. Welcome back. So we are continuing on with this lab series. So right now we are going to be focusing on DNS. We want to make sure DNS is properly configured, and we're going to be looking at basically forward lookup zones and reverse lookup zones inside of DNS. Nothing too complicated, just basic structure that you should pay attention to when you actually install Active Directory. Sometimes it's not configured properly, and then sometimes you're trying to join a computer to a domain and you're having like really bad connection issues, or the client can't find the DNS server or all that stuff. So we want to make sure we kind of fix a few little things that I recognized over the years when you do an Active Directory. All right, so without further ado, let's get started. Like I said, my box is up, so I'm always looking up. Please forgive me. So we are continuing on from this version here where we started with the last thing we did here. We installed Active Directory. We went through and played with some accounts, created groups and account users. Now we're going to follow along, and let's go ahead and log in. If you remember, this account was the account I created from our last session. So just remember that we're going to log in. So at this point, before you get started, also always remember, like I said, create a checkpoint. Key, create a checkpoint, right? Because if you go in and things are not working and you mess it up, instead of going all the way back from the beginning of the lab where we started, you can just revert back to this checkpoint. Let me show you real quick. So your checkpoints will be saved under here, right? So if you look under your computer, your DCs, you have to click on the machine itself inside of Hyper-V, just so I could cover that. So then you can see an automatic checkpoint was created when we first started labbing out. And then underneath, before ADDS install, remember we created this checkpoint. So if I want to go all the way back to the beginning, this is the one that I would revert to. Now, I just created one called before install DNS. So this is the current one. So just say something goes wrong and I mess this box up, I can always revert back to it. So for this lab purposes, like I said, every time we start something new, go ahead and create a checkpoint. All right. So let's get back into this account, and we're going to try to, what did I do? Always remember your password, guys. That's very important. Really, this keyboard been acting up. There we go. I don't know. I got a new keyboard, and sometimes it just overtypes. All right, so when we first started, like I said, DNS is installed because ADDS was installed. So as a dependent, normally it will capture DNS and try to install it with it, right? It's just two pieces of the pod. They like to work together. If it was not installed, you could go to add roles and features here, or you could go up here to manage and add roles and features. And remember the front screen before you begin, it will tell you all this stuff that you need. So just go ahead and click next. Make sure it's a role-based feature to find it. Click next. Check out your server pool. It's just giving you information. You'll click next, and then this is where you'll go and check off DNS to make sure that it's going to be installed. But since it's already installed from the previous exercise, what we're going to do is cancel this because we don't need to install it there. Well, you can't because it's already there. All right, and we're just going to go ahead and do some modifications to it. All right, so go up to tools. Remember, anything that's already installed, it will be under tools. And we're going to find DNS. Now, under DNS, this is how it's going to look. You're going to click on your server name, and you will see that you have a few zones that are already created. Now, forward lookup zone is going to be by default. You will see once you created that first forest and you identified the new bill of the domain and you promote it and all this stuff, it's going to automatically create a forward lookup zone for you. The first container or the first box, DC01, was already created. They created a host record, and if you see, it matches the IP address of this box or this computer system, right? So by default, all of these are created inside of your forward lookup zone. So forward lookup zone is basically it's there for you to translate host names to IP addresses. Right, that's the main thing about the forward lookup zone is forwarding. Basically, when you try to resolve an IP, host name will resolve to IP addresses. Now, reverse lookup zone is going to do the opposite. It's going to translate IP addresses to the host. So if you look over here under your reverse lookup zone, there's nothing there. And this is why I'm saying sometimes this is easily overlooked, because when we create, by default, it creates a forward lookup zone, but nothing is created inside of the reverse lookup zone. So the first thing we want to do, I want to show you something before we get started. If you go to the top and we do a launch NS lookup, one of the issues we're going to see is that this is going to try to ping IP version 6. And we're not really configuring the DNS or IP version 6. So if you're trying to do an NS lookup and this is happening and we're using IPv4 to do a test, what you want to do is go into the properties of your box, and you should see that if you're doing all IP addresses, right, these two are checked. There's multiple ways you can turn this off. You can leave this here and go into your NIC card and disable IPv6, right? Or you can go here, only the following IP addresses, uncheck this box and click apply and click OK, so that it will only check for IPv4 NS lookup. So when you do a new launch right here, as you can see, now it doesn't check for IPv6, it checks for IPv4 because we unchecked that box. And this is where you want to start. So now you can see the default server, right? The default server shows up as unknown. And this is what we're trying to tackle right here. We're trying to fix this issue. Okay, so first, let's go into reverse lookup zone, and we're going to create a new zone. I'm going to call it next, or we're going to click next, sorry. Make sure it's a primary, right? And go ahead and click next. And then make sure you do not uncheck nothing else. Everything else needs to stay the same. Click next. This needs to replicate to all the DNS servers running on this domain, on this forest. So do not select anything. Just go ahead and click the next button. Now, remember, like I said, we're working with IPv4. So this is already checked for you. You shouldn't have to make any changes. And then you're going to go ahead and click next. Now, the network ID is going to match up with the network ID of your box. So if you look at your local server on your server management console, you can see right here 172.16.1.1, right? So the first 3 octets of this is what we're looking for when we're selecting this. So this will be 172, that's 16.1. So that's what you're going to type in there, because it's the first 3. All right, first 3 octets. And if you don't understand what we mean by octets, you got to go find those videos for CCNA and try to get into subnetting a little bit so you can understand what we're talking about. But it's the first set of numbers, because it's not 3 numbers, but it's a set of numbers. So it's like a package. So they normally go up to only 3, like I'm saying. It'll be like 192.168.1. whatever, 10.10.10.10, 10.0, whatever. It's just different versions. We're doing a different classes IP addresses. So you just kind of need to understand IPs when it comes to subnetting and stuff like that. As a server tech, you need to understand this. It is critically important, because you will be working with Cisco devices, networking devices as well. It is something that you have to also add to your plate. Okay, but this class is not set up for that. We can go into that later when we start building out. But right now we're just focusing on trying to get the applications to properly communicate. All right, so click next. Now, this is already recommended for you. You want to make sure you allow secure dynamic updates, recommended for AD. as it states right here, do not make any other changes. You want to go ahead and click next. This is going to tell you that it's successfully completed, and then you click finish. Now, once you look inside your reverse lookup zone now, you should see 2 new items that are created. Okay? And this is what it looks like. Now, one more thing that we need to do, if you look at this, we can go back here and we can do another launch NS lookup, and it should also fail as well, because it should still say unknown. Because one thing we need to also add, when we go back into your forward lookup zone and we go into here, we need to try to resolve the FQDN to the IP address. So when you're looking it up, it actually makes sense. So for here, we need to add what's called a host a record, right? And at this point, right, you will not put anything up here because we want to use the entire domain, right, the parent domain. Make sure that you click create associated PTR record, right? So it's like a pointer record. It needs to be checked. And then we're going to put the IP address now of this server. So 172.16.1.11, right? And we want to add the host here, right? It will tell you that a host record for that domain was successfully created. I'm going to click OK, and we're going to click done. So now, as you can see, a new host record is resolved in here. And then also DC01 has its own host record. Inside the reverse lookup zone, we did the opposite so that it can translate back and forth, right? So these are just basically the tweaks that we're trying to do, right? These are the tweaks that you want to make sure you try to get done on your DNS before you think that everything is okay. All right, so once this is done for the translation piece, now we just need to go back to launch NS lookup, and as you can see right there, that's what I'm talking about. This is how you kind of fix the translation to go from host to IP and IP to host for your own server. This little tweak that you do right here, it fixes a lot of small problems later on in the build, especially when it comes to DNS issues, right? So this is why I was saying, make sure you try to configure this. It's not a big deal. It's not a big DNS fix. It's just a tiny little thing that I've noticed that helps out a lot inside of the builds later, especially when it comes to joining computers to the domain, trying to find Active Directory, trying to find their root, trying to find the global catalog, little stuff like that. Like these little tweaks when it comes to Exchange, for some reason, if you don't kind of fix this in the beginning, you possibly could run into a little bit of headaches. And sometimes if you're having DNS problems, man, DNS will have you scratching your head thinking that something else is wrong. The router is not writing properly. You could think it's a networking problem. You'll be troubleshooting for days, and it's DNS. So if you're ever having problems with translation, things not routing properly, work up your way through troubleshooting processes. Start from the layers. So you can start from layer 1 all the way up, or start from layer 7 all the way down. But I like to say start from the user level. Think it through first. Think through the process before you start troubleshooting. Think about, okay, what was the last thing you did that affected the problem or created that problem? And then you have a baseline of where you can start. Just write it down. Okay, well, I installed Active Directory. Was it working before I installed the directory? Was the answer yes or no? If the answer was yes, then I need to go and start working from the top layer down, because Active Directory was an application, right? And I installed the application. Was it not working before Active Directory? No. Okay, so you go to the left, go to the right. Was the problem existing before Active Directory? Yes. Was it on a NIC card? Probably. So now you might want to go to a lower layer and start from layer 1 all the way up. It could be that your Cat5 cable is not working right. Maybe your Wi-Fi settings are off. Maybe you did the wrong IP address, and you guys get what I'm saying, right? So troubleshooting as an IT professional is going to be extremely important. Don't forget to do research. There's tons of blogs. There's so many things online that you can find. We now even have AI to help us out. Like, it's incredible. I got a buddy that's making an AI called Axe Chief. I think it's crazy, but it's great because if you run into issues, you could just be like, hey, here's an app which builds on the AI content that you can ask questions. It will help you troubleshoot. Do not be afraid to troubleshoot. It's going to help you save a lot of time. Okay, guys, thank you so much for watching this piece of the lab setup. I really appreciate everything that you do. We're here to actually make you better. We're here to try to get you to learn these little steps, these little tweaks, so that you can be better off in your career, in your profession, and later on, maybe you might, hit a high-paying job. And if you do, salute to you, whichever you want to go with. But it's a good thing. The more you learn, the more you know. I think it's the more confidence you'll be, or confident, but also you will feel some type of accomplishment later on, that you have the ability to do so much. IT is always going to be around, but there's so many different approaches to it, and there's so many different windows, so many different umbrellas that falls into IT. You can go security, you can go networking, you can go cyber. Like, it's so broad. But if you know the basics, it will help you to go forward. And this is why we're here, to help you guys out. So thank you so much for watching. Until next time, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video with all your friends. We'll be here. I'll see you guys on the next episode.